Hello, I'm Zaccura and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be talking about reference photos and how you, as an illustrator, can use them to make original illustrations. Meaning you're not doing a study of a photo, you're not copying it directly. That would be not original. You're making an original piece, a completely original composition, but using a photo or photos to help you visualize and build up your idea. And in this case, instead of starting with a conceptual idea first and then looking for photos, we'll be starting with a photo first and then extracting something original out of it. The great thing about this technique is it allows you to make art even during times when you don't have any ideas already in your head. It's a really handy tool for artists who are struggling with a lack of inspiration or who need to pump out art on some kind of schedule and are just running out of ideas. Also, it's just a really fun and relaxing way of drawing, so I definitely recommend it. For this video, I will be using this lovely, beautiful photo. It was shot by Jen Ravenna Tran, and I just loved the color palette in this photo and the fact that it had so many fun objects in it. Honestly, I feel like I could do an entire series of illustrations just based off of this one photo. And that actually segues into the first tip, which is to always keep a lookout for reference photos that excite and inspire you. You do not have to wait until you already have some kind of idea for an illustration before you go hunting for photos. Always keep an eye out. Spend some time just browsing on Pinterest or social media. Try also taking your own photos whenever you can and start building up an inspiration folder or maybe like a Pinterest board where you can store all of these photos. This way you'll always have somewhere to go if you ever need inspiration or if you've run out of ideas on what to draw. Now, once you've picked a photo or multiple photos that you really like and you feel like you want to make something from it, start making some conceptual decisions. The main aspect that I really liked about this photo was the color palette. I loved the orange, pinkish dusk time of the day and that very clear blue sky, so I knew that was definitely going into my illustration. Next up, I noticed this very sharp rooftop edge. And I thought that the shape of that was really cool. It's probably the flattest part of the photo because all of the other buildings and objects are at some kind of perspective angle, whereas this one was really just this corner floating in midair. So I thought, hey, what if I use that tiny part of the photo as the main focus of my illustration? But I didn't really like the plain dark blue shingles of that building. My composition was already going to be very simplistic and it could use a little bit of texture. I really like the texture of this part of the building. It's this natural wood and the paint is peeling off, and I love the way that the light almost shimmers off of it. So I decided to have my building have that similar texture. Another thing I really liked was the full moon hanging in the sky, so I decided to slip that into the illustration as well. And as you can see with this technique, what you're doing is you're viewing reference photos as a smorgasbord of possibility, full of objects, colors, textures, and shapes that you can pick and choose from to create something new. This way, your brain doesn't have to get taxed with figuring out every little nook and cranny in your world, and instead can really focus on the parts that it does best at that moment. Maybe for you, that's a character that you really want to draw, but you're not sure what setting they should be in. Or the other way around, maybe you have an idea for this epic landscape scene that wouldn't be complete without a little character in the foreground, but you're not really sure what outfit the character should be wearing or how their hair should be. Well, if you've built up your inspiration folder, maybe you can flip through that and find some pictures of outfits and hairdos and pick and choose which aspects you think would best fit into your world. Remember, you're not letting the photos create the illustration for you. You're still the one making all of the decisions and creating a composition and piece of art that you invented and wouldn't exist without you. The point here is that you just don't always have to solely rely on images in your head to help you with the process. Reference photos are kind of like an external second brain that you can access whenever your internal primary brain needs some help. And a lot of the time you don't have to only use like one photo to make your illustration from. In the case of this video, I did only use one photo because, like I said, this photo has so much in it already, and I was going for a very simplistic shape-based piece anyway. Since I wanted the illustration to have a focal point, I decided to add a character sitting on the rooftop. The feels I was getting from the colors was a very nostalgic, comfy, warm kind of feeling, and so I put a little boy with a baseball cap because what's more nostalgic than a child wearing a baseball cap? You all know you've worn them. Whether or not you wear them now, you've worn them before. If you use this technique properly, then your end result, your end illustration, should not be recognizably similar to the photos you used for inspiration unless you expressly point out like your whole process, like I did in this video. I'm sure that you guys can definitely see the similarities of my illustration compared to the photo because I pointed out everything. But if I didn't and I just showed the illustration, which I've actually tested this with somebody, even if people have seen the photo that I was inspired by, they probably wouldn't be able to tell that it was that specific photo that I took inspiration from, because there are many photos out there of buildings with this kind of texture and photos of this time of the day with the at dusk sunset or the little moon. But of course, the originality that Jen Tran brought with her photo comes from the whole composition. The way she was able to notice the potential of the environment around her at that moment and managed to capture this really scenic moment that just exudes the feeling of this quiet little town, and the angle of the shot is what you might see in a movie. And it's this unique viewpoint that each photographer brings that makes their work more than just the sum of its parts. It becomes artistry. However, rather than trying to capture and replicate Jen's artistry within my drawing, as I would if I was doing a copy or a study, I instead viewed everything in her photo as elements and ingredients that, when broken down, tossed around, and combined with my own artistic viewpoint, I can transform into something new, and that is what I consider original art. It's not a matter of drawing something that no one's ever seen before, because everything, every illustration is inspired by something, even if it was completely made up from your head. The elements that you paint, whether they're trees or mountains or space, are all things that you are familiar with because you've seen them before to some extent. And when you paint from your head, you're simply using all of those past experiences and visual memory as your reference photos. And even in the cases of fantasy or sci-fi, where perhaps your plants or animals or buildings do not exist at all in real life, everything that you come up with is in some way grounded in our real world. If your made-up creature has legs and it walks around, it's probably because most of the animals in real life in our world have legs and they walk around. So it's a natural thought process that an animal, even a made-up one, should probably have legs. But as artists, we have the ability to mix and mash things together to create new ideas and new objects that can only exist on our canvases. You know that same animal that was just walking around on its legs? You know, maybe it has bird feathers, but it has a head like a dog and a tail like a lizard.
Oh my
You know, all of those aspects exist in real life. That's why I was able to come up with them. But by mashing them together, you create something completely new and original. And using reference photos with this technique is the exact same process, except in this case, you're not bound by only your own personal experiences and visual memory bank, and instead are able to utilize the entire world and nearly infinite combinations of colors and objects to use as ingredients in your own compositions. And it's just really an incredibly powerful tool that I feel a lot of artists don't utilize to its full extent and its full potential. And often I feel that's because of a slightly misinformed idea that it's in some way stealing or cheating to use photos for inspiration or for reference. And of course, without a doubt, there are legal implications, copyright laws that I believe everyone should familiarize themselves with so that they don't make any mistakes or hurt anyone unintentionally. But beyond that, if we're talking from a moral standpoint, I think as long as your head and your heart is in the right place and you're not intentionally trying to rip anyone off, if you're trying to be your own artist with your own voice, then there are very ethical and respectful ways to utilize the work of others in a positive way to help you get your own voice out. Because that is ultimately how art as a whole evolves and has evolved since the beginning throughout the centuries. So if you haven't already, start building up that inspiration folder. And if you can, also start becoming a bit of a photographer yourself. You know, you don't have to be like a good photographer. I'm certainly not a great photographer. But unlike a photographer who's looking to snap photos that are meant to stand alone as art itself, when you're taking photos for illustration reference, you don't have to worry at all about composition. You don't have to worry at all about it being pretty because you'll be doing that part on the canvas. Recently, I've been trying to make a habit of, like, whenever I come across a cool texture or cool object or something, I'll just snap a photo of it. So this way I won't get stuck in that very familiar situation where you're in the middle of an illustration and you're like, how do I draw a metal post? Not me, not Zaccura. What kind do you want? I got stainless steel, rusty, semi-rusty, you name it, boy. So yeah, I guess the biggest takeaway of this video is really to build up an inspiration folder full of photos and textures and assets that, combined with your own imagination, can help you bring your ideas and your worlds to life. And that pretty much wraps up this video. I know this technique is probably one that a bunch of you guys have already heard of, maybe you're already using it, so let me know in the comments if you really enjoy this way of drawing, or maybe you don't enjoy this way of drawing, or if you've never tried it, are you gonna try it? You know, whatever, man. I always love hearing from you guys. If you enjoyed this video, found it useful, helpful, or just entertaining, please be sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Also be sure to hit that little bell and turn on all notifications so you do not miss out on any upcoming videos. Now that July is here, I may be switching back to traditional art soon because I did a lot of digital during June, but we'll see because I've still got a few digital pieces that I haven't shared yet, so yeah, that's right. Until next time, stay awesome, stay inspired, always. See ya!
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here. I got time, it's clear to see. From up here